All right, everyone, welcome back for another episode of Carnivore Trades. Today is Friday, April 8th, 2022. If you're not done so already, please subscribe, like, comment, etc. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com for swing trading alerts and analysis. Doing this video a little early today. I am doing a stream for members only after the bell. We're going to kind of go over our expected moves. And the move I kind of laid out Monday for the members is sort of playing out pretty well so far, and I think we'll get a continuation of that. But overall, the spiders are really just chopping around today. Tech is a little weaker as yields continue to rise. 10-year getting up to 2.713. But the big story overall for the spiders is this 450 pin. So I believe I talked about this a little bit yesterday, and I also tweeted out this morning. And I said that this is a nice little bullish pattern here on the spiders. The problem is that 450 pin is coming into play, so there's a straddle of options expiring, both calls and puts, and it's likely that they probably close us right at or on or above 450, basically to the T. You can see, so we get up here, they fade us off. Now the algo is kicking in and it's popping us back up a little bit. So we'll probably close as close to that as possible. And next week, remember, is OPEX, and it is a shortened trading week. Friday, we have the day off for Easter observed. So OPEX will be just a 4-day trading week. So it's going to be pretty wild. But I also think the 450 pin will come into play there as well. Let's take a look here at the spiders daily. So daily chart, so we got that reaction off the 20 moving average we talked about, and coincidentally or perhaps not, the 200-day moving average is right in that, it's 448.15. That's where it sits right now, but it's right in that 450 area. So it looks like we're kind of getting double pinned right now, pinned to the 200 and pinned to that 450 area. So it wouldn't surprise me if we were to close, if that 450 was to come into play next week. I believe there is a straddle. Actually, I know there is a straddle there already. It is a little bit heavier on the put side at the moment, but that doesn't mean that can't change, especially if they pop us up early in the week. More calls will come in to that expiry as retail traders try to gamble on those weekly options, and institutions will end up burning those out most likely. Overall here, let's take a look at the weekly time frame. So spiders potentially working on a weekly higher low here. So we got back above that 50-week moving average and now kind of getting a reaction off of that. So that's a bullish look there for the markets, and it kind of goes with the theory here that we can potentially make another leg up in the equity markets moving forward. But right now we're kind of in backing and filling mode, and I know the macro doesn't make sense right now, but it doesn't. Things don't have to always make sense. You just have to trade the chart and follow the flow overall, and that's how you're going to make money. Anyways, let's look at the triple Qs here. So a little bit weaker. We talked about yields, obviously putting pressure on tech. Coming up into this necktie, and that was going to be good resistance, so no surprise it is pulling back. It's still, potentially putting in a higher low. We're coming off the lows here. We'll see if we get a bid into the close here on the Qs. That could make that weekly candle look a little bit better. But again, they're going to follow, the Qs are going to follow what the spiders are doing. And it is kind of just hovering just above that 50-day moving average. Did make a slight lower low here on the daily, though, so that is noteworthy. But overall, nothing too terrible. We had a power move here on the Qs, and right now it's holding that 350 area for now. Let's take a look here at the diamond. So diamond weekly is actually, you can see it on the daily here, nice little pop, and then a little pullback pattern, and now getting back up here. But the weekly on the diamond actually looks really good. Nice upright, tight inside bar. I like that action. And remember, consumer staples, a lot of, consumer goods, blue chip stocks make up the Dow. And those stocks are just going to perform better in a high yield environment. It's just really that simple. And that is why the Dow is outperforming currently. Russell 2000 here. Potentially a higher low. It's holding that 100 moving average, but obviously weaker. It's kind of wedged between the 20 and the 100 at the moment. But, a bit of a rollover bar here. It is trying to put in some doji pivots. So maybe it can get a bid up again if we do bid earlier in the week and then kind of fade into that 450 area on the spiders. The Russell should at least hold up. But obviously, we've been making note of the fact that the Russell is weaker, which, overall is not a macro bullish kind of indicator, right? All right, so let's just flip over to yields first today, and we'll talk about the 10-year. So 2.713 on the 10-year. The yield curve did expand just a little bit, so that is good for financials. Let's take a look at the 30-year here. So that is halfway to 2.8 now. It's almost to my target, and I've been giving that target out for literally months now. Before this move even started, I said 2.8, possibly 3% would get hit on the 30-year, and we are, less than 50 basis points from that. So, pretty big move here on the 30-year, and there's your kind of zone right there. That's where you broke down. So that's where you logically would retest there on the 30-year yield. I will say, they're getting a little long in the, I mean, they've been getting long in the tooth here, but that's what happens when everybody piles into one trade. But there should be a good amount of resistance up at 2.8. I'm not sure if it pulls back from there, does it get to 3? It absolutely could, especially, again, when everybody piles into a trade, it can overshoot, but it is getting long in the tooth. So a sharp reversal wouldn't necessarily surprise me at this point. But for now, yields are continuing to thrust higher, and you got to respect that. High yield debt, HYG, is still getting hit, so rolling over as well. Again, got to watch this low pivot here. But again, the big picture, the macro stuff is not lining up with the markets. But for now, that divergence can remain in place and the markets can move higher. The market mechanics dictate price more than macro, at least in the near term. And as long as market conditions are favorable for a move up, the markets can move up. So just keep that in mind. All right, so let's flip over. So let's talk semiconductors. So semi's getting hit again a little bit today, getting below that 250 handle. There's, filled this gap here. There's still a fair amount of support in this area. The monthly time frame is still holding that 20-month moving average. I think there's a good chance we can put in a higher low here, but semi's getting hit a little bit. Nvidia has a gap fill just beneath where we currently sit. So maybe that gets hit on Monday, but I want to show you AMD here. So another big leading semiconductor. Take a look at this blue trend line going all the way back to 2020. So, and you also have the 100 moving average coinciding with that just beneath. You also have the previous all-time highs right here. You could, even put a pivot right there. Right in this zone, about $95 is really good support on AMD. Yes, I know you came down here and chopped around a little bit, but you did the same thing right in this area, and it still held that trend line. So I think that in the short term, AMD's probably close to a pretty good sized low here. But again, it is way off the highs, and it has shown some weakness here, so that has to be respected. But it isn't coming into a nice support zone there. All right, so Dow Transports. Actually, let's cover IGV first. So IGV still holding this 330 area, again making a slight lower low here, but overall a weekly higher low. So we'll give it the benefit of the doubt. It's holding this green bar, and I don't really see any problems. You are below these moving averages, but again, if the spiders get a bid and if yields pull back, really that's the big story. If yields pull back, tech will rally pretty sharply. All right, so Dow Transports. Again, putting in a doji candle here. So you got that little bottoming tail yesterday after a big sell-off, really oversold here. Putting in a doji, it is holding support. I think this has a good chance of putting in some type of a pivot here. And maybe you can make a run at 15,000, maybe 15.5, maybe up into these moving averages here at some point. But I do think the transports have put in a short-term bottom here. XHB, so go figure, XHB is actually green today with yields ripping higher. So again, could be some, maybe a little bit of a signal that yields are going to pull back soon. Perhaps, we do have TLT does have options expiring next week. So, maybe they bleed out, all the put buyers. Typically when you get something that's really oversold going into OPEX, you get a reversal. Same thing with overbought. So, it's a possibility, but XHB, ITB, both green on the day today. So go figure. And VNQ continuing to flag. So I don't really see any issues with this, honestly. Surprisingly in this environment, it's actually okay, but there still is a ton of resistance up here, but it's trying to flag, it's trying to accumulate, and you are above the moving averages. So as far as a technical standpoint is concerned, this is not terrible. All right, XLF. So getting a bid today, again, off of the yield curve kind of expanding a little bit, helps out those financials. And, I've been saying for the last couple of days here and last week, really, that this isn't broken. I know this is a pretty steep sell-off here, but nice tail yesterday, filled the gap, and now getting a little bid today. Take a look at JP Morgan. That has been a leader today, up 2%. So basically bidding off a double bottom, slightly higher lows here. So that is finding its footing. Morgan Stanley also got a bid off a double bottom. And Goldman, I told you guys about that wedge. Nice pop there on Goldman, up 2.7% today. Trying to fill this gap here, but that should have upside to at least 330. So nice little move there. And I told you guys, typically when you get these falling wedges like that, you typically pierce it. And you kind of a fake breakdown, so to say, and then you get a reversal, and that may have potentially happened here on Goldman. So nice little pop there. 4GS. All right, crude, it's hanging in there. So, sell off, you broke, kind of made these lower lows here. Really what it comes down to is pattern right here. So take a look at the weekly. If this starts to, chop sideways a little bit next week, this could build steam to push lower. And I still think it's got to test that 85 area and correct down to that handle. But again, we've got a war going on, so who knows? There's always that chance that we could get news over the weekend that sends this higher. Take a look at XLE. I think so. You know what I was just talking about with oversold things and buying puts into expiry. This is a candidate for a reversal in my book. So these stocks are just really high on the hog. Chevron, Exxon, Conoco. We took a look at the OIH, XOP. So these stocks are just really high on the hog. And generally, when you have a lot of gamma squeezing and call buying going into OPEX, it's not very uncommon at all for there to be a pretty sharp reversal to burn out those late call buyers. But again, these stocks are holding up, and you got to respect it and got to give it the benefit of the doubt for now. Anyways, nat gas. So reversing off of that double top here, still a nice move here for nat gas. I still think it needs to correct though. Probably get a pullback into that 575, maybe 550 area. But it did hold up a little bit after a reversal today. And the weekly, just really overbought here, all things considered. And again, when you have lots of momentum, sometimes you can overshoot. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing a little bit here with nat gas. But anyways, it did pull back off the highs. Dollar index also pulling back off the highs, potentially putting in a little topping tail there on the daily. So, and it got through that 100 handle. So, and then it, reversed down. The weekly still looks okay though, but we'll see what we get next week. It went right into this breakdown area, and that's where you're seeing the pullback. So we'll see if we get a retrace next week. Overall, no real problems with the dollar. It's just overbought, all things considered. Gold getting a little bit of a bid today, still kind of inside of this, kind of just wedged in between these two levels here, so potentially bearish consolidation. But GDX did get a nice bid, did not make a new high, but got a nice little power bid today, up 2.5. And silver also getting a little bit of a bid too. We're watching this little flag pattern potentially, and the SILJ also got a bit of a bid, but still inside of this big red bar, but no real problems on the weekly. Platinum did bid up a little bit as well, as did palladium, but nothing really to do with these two names at the moment. Copper also trying to flag. Take a look at the weekly. There's still a ton of supply at 480, but a nice little pop here, and then 1, 2, 3 inside bar. So maybe you can, maybe you can bid higher, but you're still inside of this big red candle ultimately. So just bear that in mind. All right, so let's flip over to Bitcoin and Ether. All right, so Bitcoin's trying to hold this trend line. It, getting a little bit of a weak bid. We'll see what we get going into the weekend. Again, this may be weekly OPEX related as well. Got pinned back down to 43,000. But we'll see what we get. Ether does look like it's in a little bit better of technical shape, but you're still inside of this sell-off bar. So overall, short term, you do have a little bit of a bearish look here, but it is holding this area, and it's holding that 20-period moving average. So nothing terrible. The rest of the cryptos are getting a little bit hit a little bit today, except for Doge. Litecoin down here. So some of these are in much weaker technical positions. Solana is actually not terrible. This is not a terrible little pullback pattern in that 20. Let's take a look at Cardano. Yeah, so broke down a little bit, but again, nothing terrible here. Still above the 50. But, ultimately, it's all going to come down to Bitcoin. Can it hold this trend line? We'll see what we get into the weekend once the big money leaves. And, sometimes you get those big liquidity those low liquidity moves over the weekend on Bitcoin can really drive it, but we'll see what we get moving forward. Any sort of breakdown would be a little problematic, and we know that it is a leading indicator for the equity market, so we always have to be aware of that. All right, anyways, let's flip back over to the spiders. So yeah, trying to hold this inside bar here. Again, we probably pop up. My guess is we close right on this 200 moving average here. This is a 10-minute time frame, but it is about 3:30 p.m. We'll see what we get overall. I doubt there's a huge move here in the last 30 minutes, but I do think they pin us right up to that 450 area. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. You guys have a great rest of your weekend. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com, and I'll talk to you all next week.